July 29th, 2023. Leongatha, Australia. A quiet country town about 2 hours southeast of Melbourne. A woman invites her estranged husband's family over for lunch. It's supposed to be a reconciliation, a chance to mend fences. She served them a home-cooked meal. Beef Wellington, individual pastries made with care. Within hours, all 4 guests are violently ill, vomiting, diarrhea, excruciating stomach cramps. Within days, 3 of them are dead. The 4th, a pastor named Ian Wilkinson, barely survives. He spends weeks in the hospital, fighting for his life. The cause of death? Death cap mushrooms. Among the deadliest mushrooms on Earth. 1 mushroom is enough to kill an adult, and someone had baked them into beef Wellington. The woman who cooked the meal, Erin Patterson, claimed it was an accident, a tragic mix-up with foraged mushrooms. But investigators found something disturbing. They uncovered a digital trail of searches for death cap mushrooms and phone data placing her near locations where those deadly fungi had been recorded in the months before the lunch. She bought a food dehydrator, then dumped it at a local tip while her guests lay dying in hospital. And she had served herself from a different color plate. Was this really an accident? Or was Erin Patterson a calculated killer who served death on a silver platter? This case gripped Australia for 2 years. It made headlines around the world. And in 2025, a jury delivered their verdict. This is the story of the mushroom murderer and the lunch that became a death sentence. To understand this crime, you need to understand Erin Patterson. Because on the surface, she seemed completely ordinary. A suburban mom, a former professional, the kind of woman you'd wave to across the street. No one suspected she was capable of murder. Erin Trudy Patterson was born Erin Scudder on September 30th, 1974, in Melbourne, Australia. She grew up in Glen Waverley, a middle-class suburb in Melbourne's southeast. By all accounts, she was intelligent and ambitious. In 1992, she was accepted to the University of Melbourne to study science. She later switched to accounting, but her career path took an unexpected turn. Erin trained to become an air traffic controller, one of the most high-pressure jobs in aviation. She graduated in 2001 and worked for Air Services Australia in Melbourne. Air traffic control requires precision, quick thinking, the ability to stay calm under pressure, skills that would later serve a darker purpose. In 2007, Erin married Simon Patterson. Simon came from a close-knit family in the Gippsland region of Victoria. His parents, Don and Gail Patterson, were well-respected in their community. Don was a retired public servant. Gail was active in local church and community groups. Simon's aunt and uncle, Heather and Ian Wilkinson, were equally beloved. Ian was a pastor at the local Cornborough Baptist Church. Heather was his devoted wife of over 40 years. When Erin married Simon, she became part of this family. She attended family gatherings. She celebrated holidays with them. She was embraced as one of their own. But the marriage didn't last. Erin and Simon had 2 children together, but their relationship was turbulent. They separated multiple times before permanently splitting in 2015. The divorce was complicated. There were disputes over finances, arguments about child support, tensions that simmered for years. By 2022, the relationship between Erin and Simon, and by extension his family, had deteriorated significantly. Social media messages and witness testimony later revealed that Erin had expressed frustration with her in-laws. She felt judged by them, criticized, unwelcome. The family that had once embraced her now felt like enemies. And Erin Patterson was not the type of woman who forgot a grudge. In early 2023, something changed. After years of distance and tension, Erin Patterson suddenly wanted to reconnect with her estranged husband's family. She reached out to Simon. She suggested a family lunch. Her reason? She claimed she had been diagnosed with cancer. She wanted advice on how to tell the children. It seemed like a genuine olive branch, a moment of vulnerability, a reason for the family to come together. But there was a problem. Erin Patterson did not have cancer. Prosecutors would later argue that the cancer claim was a lie, a manipulation designed to ensure her targets attended the lunch. Who would refuse an invitation from a woman saying she was seriously ill and needed help telling her kids? While outwardly planning a reconciliation, Erin was allegedly doing something else entirely. She was researching death cap mushrooms. Death cap mushrooms, Amanita phalloides, are among the deadliest fungi in the world. They're responsible for the majority of mushroom-related deaths globally. What makes them so dangerous? First, they look harmless. Small, plain yellowish-brown. They resemble several edible mushroom species. Even experienced foragers have mistaken them. Second, they taste pleasant. There's no bitter warning. No foul smell. Victims have no idea that they've been poisoned until it's too late. Third, cooking doesn't help. Heat does not destroy the toxins. You can bake them, fry them, boil them. They remain deadly. And fourth, one mushroom is enough to kill an adult. The toxins attack the liver and kidneys. Without rapid treatment, death is often inevitable within days. Investigators later discovered that Erin had visited a website called iNaturalist, a citizen science platform where people report sightings of plants and animals. She had viewed locations where death cap mushrooms had been spotted, and in April 2023, cell phone records placed Erin in the vicinity of known death cap mushroom locations. Around that time, she purchased a food dehydrator, a device that can be used to dry and preserve mushrooms. The purchase seemed innocent at the time, but it will become a crucial piece of evidence. In July 2023, Erin finalized her plans. She invited 5 people to lunch at her home on July 29th. Her estranged husband, Simon, his parents, Don and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister and brother-in-law, Heather and Ian Wilkinson. Notably, Erin's children would not be present. She sent them to a movie before the guests arrived. The stage was set. But on the night before the lunch, something unexpected happened. Simon pulled out. He told Erin he didn't feel comfortable attending. He was wary of her. In pre-trial material that the jury ultimately didn't hear, police alleged that Simon had become suspicious years earlier after several unexplained illnesses, and they even then later dropped, separate attempted murder charges relating to him. Whatever the full truth, one thing is clear. Simon's absence may have saved his life, but his parents, his aunt, and uncle had no such suspicions. They arrived at Erin Patterson's home on Saturday, July 29th, 2023. Ready for lunch. July 29th, 2023. Lunchtime. Don and Gail Patterson arrived at Erin's home in Leongatha. So did Heather and Ian Wilkinson. The atmosphere was reportedly pleasant. Erin was a gracious host. She prepared the meal herself. On the menu, beef Wellington. A classic dish, beef wrapped in mushrooms, pate, and puff pastry. But Erin didn't make a traditional, family-size Wellington. Instead, she made individual portions, 1 pastry per person. The recipe she used called for a single large Wellington, but prosecutors argued she made individual servings for a specific reason, so she could control which portions contained poison. According to testimony from Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor, Erin served her guests on large gray plates, but she ate from a different color plate, orange or tan. This detail would become crucial. If Erin had simply grabbed any plate at random, why would hers be different? The judge later accepted the argument that this was deliberate, a precaution to ensure she didn't accidentally poison herself. Ian Wilkinson testified about the day. He said Erin seemed reluctant to let her guests help in the kitchen. Both Heather and Gail offered to help plate the food. Erin declined. She plated everything herself. The guests ate their meals. They chatted. They had no idea what they had just consumed. Within hours, the symptoms began. That evening, all 4 guests became violently ill. Vomiting, diarrhea, severe stomach cramps. Ian and Heather initially thought it was gastroenteritis, a stomach bug. They didn't immediately connect it to the lunch, but the symptoms worsened. By the next day, they were in serious trouble. Death cap mushroom poisoning follows a cruel pattern. The initial symptoms, the vomiting and diarrhea, typically begin 6 to 12 hours after ingestion. Then, deceptively, the symptoms may seem to improve for a day or two, but the toxins are still working, attacking the liver, destroying cells. By the time victims realize how serious it is, catastrophic organ damage has already occurred. All 4 guests were hospitalized. Doctors initially struggled to identify the cause. There wasn't enough evidence to confirm mushroom poisoning right away. The antidote was not administered immediately. Their conditions deteriorated rapidly. On August 4th, 2023, less than a week after the lunch, Heather Wilkinson died. That same day, Gail Patterson also died. The following day, August 5th, Don Patterson died. 3 people dead from a single meal. Ian Wilkinson survived, barely. He spent weeks in the hospital, including time in intensive care. He was finally discharged in late September 2023, nearly 2 months after the lunch. He had lost his wife of over 40 years, his sister-in-law, his brother-in-law, all because they accepted a lunch invitation. Even before the victims died, investigators were already suspicious. 3 people from the same lunch, all suffering the same catastrophic symptoms? This was no coincidence. The focus immediately fell on Erin Patterson. But Erin had a story. She claimed she had also gotten sick after the lunch. She said she experienced diarrhea for several days. If she was poisoned too, she couldn't be the killer, right? Wrong. Prosecutors called doctors and nurses who had treated Erin. They testified that her symptoms and test results were inconsistent with death cap toxicity and that she discharged herself against medical advice. In the prosecution's view, she was faking it, trying to look like a victim, not a culprit. Then came the crucial discovery. In early August 2023, while our guest lay dying in hospital, Erin Patterson dumped something at a local waste recycling center, a food dehydrator. When investigators recovered it, forensic testing found Erin Patterson's fingerprints and traces of the same deadly toxins found in death cap mushrooms. She had purchased the dehydrator months earlier. She had used it to dry mushrooms, and she had thrown away as her guests were dying. To investigators, it looked like evidence of premeditation and a desperate attempt at a cover-up. Erin initially told police she had never foraged for mushrooms. That was a lie. She told police she didn't own a dehydrator. She also reset her phone multiple times. Prosecutors alleged this was to delete incriminating evidence. When confronted with the evidence, Erin changed her story. She admitted she had foraged mushrooms. She admitted she owned a dehydrator, but she claimed the poisoning was an accident. She said she had foraged wild mushrooms months earlier and stored them in her pantry. She must have accidentally mixed them with store-bought mushrooms. A terrible mistake. She said she lied to police out of panic, not guilt. Police didn't believe her. On November 2nd, 2023, Erin Patterson was arrested and charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. She was denied bail. She would remain in custody for nearly 2 years, awaiting trial. The case that would become known as the Mushroom Murders was heading to court. The trial of Erin Patterson began on April 29, 2025, in the Supreme Court of Victoria, sitting at the Latrobe Valley Law Courts in Morwell. It would run for around 10 weeks. More than 50 witnesses would testify, and Australia and the world would watch in fascination. The case had everything. A suburban mom accused of murder. A seemingly innocent lunch turned deadly. Death by mushroom. Multiple podcasts followed the trial daily. Media crews from around the world descended on the small town of Morwell. Journalists called it the mushroom murder trial of the decade. The prosecution laid out a devastating case. They argued that Erin Patterson had planned these murders for months. The evidence trail was damning. She researched death cap mushroom locations online. Her phone placed her near those locations weeks before the lunch. She bought a food dehydrator capable of preserving dried mushrooms. She lied about having cancer to ensure her victims attended. She made individual beef Wellingtons, deviating from the recipe, so she could poison specific portions. She served herself from a different color plate. She, according to prosecutors, faked illness afterward. She disposed of the dehydrator while her victims were dying. She reset her phone to delete evidence. She lied repeatedly to investigators. Prosecutors described four calculated deceptions at the heart of the case: the fabricated cancer claim, the lethal mushrooms hidden in the food, the fake symptoms to appear like a victim, and a sustained cover-up to conceal the truth. Erin Patterson's defense lawyer had a difficult task. He couldn't deny that Erin served the mushrooms. He couldn't deny that the meal killed 3 people. Instead, he argued it was a terrible accident. He said Erin had foraged mushrooms innocently, not knowing they were deadly. She stored them in her pantry and accidentally used them in the beef Wellington. When she realized what might have happened, she panicked. She lied out of fear, not malice. The defense challenged the prosecution's evidence. They questioned witness credibility. They said Erin's online searches showed idle curiosity, not murderous intent. They argued that the different color plates were meaningless, and they emphasized that the prosecution had not offered a clear motive. Why would Erin want to kill these people? But the prosecution had an answer. While they didn't need to prove motive under Australian law, prosecutors pointed to the deteriorating relationship between Erin and her in-laws, financial tensions with her estranged husband, feelings of being judged and criticized by his family, messages expressing frustration. And in his sentencing remarks, Justice Christopher Beale accepted the prosecution's view that Simon was meant to be there too, that he was intended to be another victim who only survived because he pulled out a lunch at the last minute. If he hadn't withdrawn, there may have been 5 victims instead of 4. Erin Patterson took the stand in her own defense. She spent 8 days testifying. She was the only witness called by the defense. She maintained her innocence throughout. She described the lunch as a genuine attempt at reconciliation. She expressed remorse for the deaths. She insisted it was all a tragic accident. But under cross-examination, inconsistencies emerged. She couldn't explain why she lied so many times. She couldn't convincingly explain the dehydrator. She couldn't explain the different plates. The jury didn't believe her. In early July 2025, the jury retired to consider its verdicts. They were sequestered, kept away from the outside world, to prevent outside influence on their decision. After several days of deliberations, on July 7th, 2025, the jury returned. The courtroom was packed. Media from around the world waited for the decision. The verdicts were read. Guilty of murdering Don Patterson. Guilty of murdering Gail Patterson. Guilty of murdering Heather Wilkinson. Guilty of attempting to murder Ian Wilkinson. Guilty on all counts. Erin Patterson showed little emotion as the verdicts were announced. She blinked rapidly but said nothing. Outside the courthouse, friends of Patterson fought back tears. One said simply, "I'm saddened, but it is what it is." Erin Patterson was sentenced on September 8, 2025. In a historic first, the Supreme Court of Victoria allowed the sentencing to be broadcast live on television due to the overwhelming public interest. Justice Christopher Beale delivered the sentence. He called Patterson's crimes an enormous betrayal of trust. He noted the substantial premeditation involved. He described her elaborate cover-up when her initial lies failed. The judge said, "Only you know why you committed these crimes. I will not be speculating about that matter." He then delivered the sentence. 3 life sentences for the 3 murders. 25 years for the attempted murder, all to be served concurrently, with a non-parole period of 33 years. Patterson will be eligible for parole in 2056, when she will be around 82 years old. After the sentencing, Ian Wilkinson, the sole survivor, spoke outside the courthouse. The pastor, now in his early 70s, had lost his wife of over 40 years to the poisoned lunch. He had nearly died himself. He spoke of his grief, his loss, the unimaginable cruelty of what had happened. He said it was a truly horrible thought to live with, that someone had deliberately taken Heather's life. But he also spoke of his faith, his determination to continue living, his commitment to honoring his wife's memory. The Erin Patterson case shocked Australia. A suburban mother, a family lunch, a home-cooked meal, and 3 innocent people dead. It's a reminder that danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from people we know, people we trust, people we break bread with. Don Patterson was 70 years old, a retired public servant, a devoted husband and father. Gail Patterson was 70 years old, active in her community, a loving mother and grandmother. Heather Wilkinson was 66 years old, a pastor's wife, married for over 40 years. They were ordinary people. They did nothing wrong. They simply accepted an invitation to lunch. And for that, they paid with their lives. According to reporters in court, Erin Patterson showed no remorse at her sentencing. She kept her eyes closed for much of the hearing. She stared straight ahead. The judge noted that no psychiatric or psychological reports were provided, apparently at Patterson's instruction. We may never know exactly why she did it. Financial disputes? Family resentment? Some darker motive we'll never understand? Only Erin Patterson knows. And she's not talking. Today, Erin Patterson is held at the Dame Phyllis Frost Center in Western Melbourne, a maximum security women's prison. Her notoriety means she's kept largely isolated from other prisoners, spending around 22 hours a day alone in her cell for her own safety. Her legal team has lodged an appeal against her convictions, and a Victorian Court of Appeal has granted her leave to challenge the jury's verdicts. At the same time, prosecutors have appealed her sentence, arguing the 33-year non-parole period is manifestly inadequate and urging the court to consider denying her any chance of parole. Both appeals are pending. For now, the jury's verdicts stand, and Erin Patterson faces the prospect of spending the rest of her life behind bars. The mushroom murder case is a warning. Trust is precious, and betrayal can come from anywhere, even a home-cooked meal. The next time someone invites you for lunch, you might want to know what's really in the food. Don Patterson, Gail Patterson, Heather Wilkinson, may they rest in peace. Thank you for watching. Take care, and be careful who you break bread with. If this case left you speechless, please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear this story. Subscribe to Mystery Archives Daily for more true crime that defies belief. Leave a comment below. What do you think drove Erin Patterson to murder? I'll see you in the next one.